being. We are recording today's session and we will be posting it to our YouTube channel. If you don't want to be on camera, please turn your camera off and potentially stay on mute. That said, for the rest of you, we really would love to see as many faces as possible. You know, we appreciate getting to see reactions and things like that in these conversations. And please use those Zoom reactions too. If you like something or really want to celebrate it, give us a thumbs up or a high five, a round of applause. And because we are a pretty big crowd, please put your questions into the chat box. Melissa will be monitoring the chat and sharing the questions in a little bit. So that's all the housekeeping ground rules. Let's talk about some good stuff. So a little bit about our organization. For those of you who may be newer to Boys and Girls Clubs of King County, our organization has been supporting families in the greater Seattle area for 77 years. Our 34 clubs serve nearly 20,000 youth from Northgate to Federal Way, from Sammamish to Bainbridge Island in a typical year. But as we all know, this is not a typical year. On March 11th, when schools closed, our clubs opened the very next day with all-day programming to support our kids and families. And we've been open for about 11 hours of programming a day ever since. Between 700 and 800 kids from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade sign on to virtual school at one of our 24 clubs every day. And we're supporting kids who attend 240 different schools across the region. I'm going to let that sink in because to me, that number is astounding. Today, we're here to talk about how Boys and Girls Clubs of King County is supporting the kids furthest from educational justice during virtual learning. To get us all on the same page, our colleagues at the University of Washington describe educational justice as a system where every student will engage in learning that is authentic, rigorous, and fun. All kids will be included and valued for their contributions, and every young person will be equipped for a lifetime of economic opportunity and personal well-being. Our conversation today will focus on what we're doing to support kids who are part of the child welfare system, potentially in kinship care, kids experiencing homelessness, youth facing educational and behavioral challenges, as well as English language learners. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce my colleague and friend, Brandee Paisano. Brandee joined the Boys and Girls Clubs 2 years ago and supports our clubs in Federal Way, Tukwila, and White Center. Brandee has deep experience in youth development. She's also a proud U.S. Navy veteran, a photographer, an entrepreneur, a club mom, and a dog lover. Take it away, Brandee.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me and spending your lunch break with me. Just full disclosure, I'm going to let you know I am a new mom to a new puppy, and so he's slowly going to sleep right now in my lap. It's like having a newborn all over again. Woo, and especially during a time of COVID. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to be in the company of some really amazing supporters and partners. First, let me start by saying how proud I am to be a team member of Boys and Girls Clubs of King County. It's just been such an inspiring time, and I couldn't be happier with my peers and the work that we're doing. During the time of COVID-19, we all find ourselves responding to needs that are closest to home. Well, the clubs are our home and the members are our family. So in this day and age, we find ourselves responding to help bridge the gap in the fight for educational justice. We're learning every day. And I think this group in attendance is learning something new every day as well. You're all along for the journey. We're learning about a disease, how to keep our youth and staff safe, the effects of remote learning, broken systems, the importance of partnerships, the key to building relationships, but most importantly, we're learning how to support the kids who need us most so they thrive. I heard someone say, our kids are our future, but we must not forget that they are our today. Let that sink in for a little bit. The service that Boys and Girls Clubs of King County provides has drastically changed over the past 9 months. So if you can imagine, in our traditional model, we tend to be a before and after school program, probably providing anywhere from 3 to 5 hours of service every day. Except for the summertime. The summertime is 11 hours of pure fun. So our staff have become case managers, social workers, food distributors, language translators, educators, tutors, tech support, not my favorite, by the way, and advocates. We have a variety of staff with years of experience under their belts, staff newly graduated from college and high school. But regardless, the level of experience, our staff have been relentless in making this the best situation for our families. Um, so much to learn, so much to learn. We are learning funding streams, resources, and systems to stretch every penny so our reach is far while keeping our youth and staff safe, most importantly. But let me be clear to say we aren't the only ones. There's a whole network of partnerships out there responding to the disparities that have been exacerbated by COVID and left communities banding together to survive. A reminder, banding together to survive. That's what our communities are doing today. Childcare providers have got to be a part of a collaborative effort approach because we're a key partner to education readiness. At this moment, we're assisting, like Jamie said, over 800 children and helping them attend virtual classes daily. So if you are the parent of one or two or three, times that by 10, 15, 20, and imagine what it's like on a daily basis. After spending several months figuring out how to create a remote learning environment with social and physical distancing taken into consideration, and again, if you've worked with kids or you're a parent or if you've just seen what we do, it is very, very hard to keep little ones from touching each other, hugging, running, playing. So it has been a lot of what I like to call active supervision. We have navigated our way through making sure all of our youth had reliable access, laptops, headphones, and felt a sense of safety and belonging. My favorite is that our approach has been community-based and mission-driven. So many of you on here are here because you have supported the work that we do, and we're in it together. And it's a beautiful thing to come out of this. To date, we are serving daily 800 kids from grades K through 12, and of those 800, we have identified that we are serving a large volume of special needs children. So among those 800, we have 63 students that are English language learners. This is for our K through 5 system. For our ADHD students, we are serving 44. Those that have disclosed autism, we have 18 students. 50 children on IEPs. So an IEP is an individual education plan to ensure that a child who has a disability is basically identified attending, an educational institution and then receiving specialized instruction related to those services. So that has been a part of our effort to figure out how to navigate this system. And in addition to that, we have 63 identified homeless youth. So if you can imagine what it's like during a global pandemic, being homeless and trying to attain an education right now, I personally can't imagine it. And I know most of you here can't, but there's a lot of kids out there that need us. So the breakdown of the services that we're providing, part of the work that we've been focused on is meeting kids with where they are at, basically. And that's the most important part, is meeting the kids where they're at, building a relationship and establishing trust. So through that, just like everybody else, we use food. No, I'm kidding. But food is always good to bring people together. So, the most important part, I think, sometimes of the work that we do is we nourish their minds. We're providing 3 daily meals and snacks for our kids every day, 800 kids every day. Can you imagine that? But in addition to that, we're really focused on the emotional impact of virtual learning and what that's going to look like. Just recently, I went to my doctor because I've been on these Zoom calls for, like many of you, for the past 9 months. And I've been having migraines and my vision has been blurred. And come to find out, my left eye is lower than my right eye, which explains for motion sickness and my head tilt and all these other things. And so I think this is just the impact being on screens has had on me at age 21. No, I'm kidding. Much older than that. But, so I mean, imagine what it's like for our youth right now that are trying to get an education without a normal structure that they're used to, right? Their whole world has been turned upside down. So we really want to focus on what does the mental health look like for our children, right? So my teammates, FYI, I have some amazing teammates, are working together with Valley Cities, as well as Valley Cities Behavioral Health and Seneca Center, to be able to provide our youth with some mental health services. So again, I just want to remind everyone that while we're doing this work as Boys and Girls Clubs of King County, so many other partners and providers are doing the same work that we are. And we've been so blessed and happy to be able to share our resources and pull them together and get them to where they need to be. So I just want to, again, thank everybody for their help there. So Valley Cities is providing behavioral health, mental health counseling sessions at our EX3 center in person every Wednesday and Friday. And in addition to that, they are meeting to look at how they can then replicate those services to our 8th Avenue Club. This is all happening down in Federal Way, and I couldn't be happier to see that. So with note of taking into consideration the amazing opportunity Valley Cities came to us with, the Seneca Center is also hoping to focus on mental health sessions and social emotional learning in small group settings, which is great because we can do some peer-to-peer work, and really, giving children the space to talk about what COVID has done for them and for their learning and their families. And, if they just want to talk about what it's like to go into Fred Meyer with a mask on every day, every day, my son would love to go to Fred Meyer every day. Like he acts like it's like Disneyland. It's ridiculous how much he loves it. So, but you know what I mean? Like just your norms changing and you having to wear a mask and kids not being able to see like the actual expressions from their mentors and their peers and their teachers. It can be very hard. In addition to all that work, some of our teammates are working on peace circles and training our teams to be able to expand peace circles across our club in lieu of maybe a club reflection day where we ask our students to maybe take the day off from the club and look at what the impacts of their behavior had that the day before. So instead of opting to do that, we're giving them the chance to participate in an all-day peace circle to discuss the emotions behind the behaviors. Now, how beautiful is that? I think that's pretty great. Like instead of turning them away, we're saying, listen, you can go do some self-reflection, at home, or you can sit with a group of us and do some self-reflection after you've calmed down. And now you have the words to be able to express how you were feeling and what led to those behaviors, right? And how are we going to move past that? And how are we going to make tomorrow a better day? I think the thing that we need to remind our young students is that there's always a chance to redeem yourself, and taking accountability even as adults, that's something that not everyone does, and we're allowing our children to be able to take accountability for their actions. Could you imagine if all these young people grow up to be adults and all take accountability? That'd be pretty cool. So like I said, we're doing some really amazing things around our mental health. The next thing I want to talk about is, like I mentioned, we are serving a large number of students with special needs, medical disabilities, as well as we have a large group of English language learners. And I think the thing to recognize is that nobody knew what we were going to be coming into in the fall, right? The districts didn't know, childcare providers didn't know, parents didn't know. And so, as I talk about all this stuff, I want to remind everyone that this is new and nothing is going to be perfect and nothing is perfect. And the whole idea behind it is that the work that we do is as long as their intent, let's recognize what the problem is, let's address the situation, and then let's focus on solutions. Let's make conversation solution based. I don't want to hear anymore what you can't do. I want to hear about what we can do together, right? So we've got a lot of English language learners. So if you can imagine if you've got kids at home, what it's like for them to be in a remote setting all day. Imagine what it's like for a 5-year-old who's homeless to do that in the club in a language that they can't even communicate in, because those are some of our kids. So it hits me to the core to imagine the struggle that they're dealing with. Sorry. As you can see, I'm very passionate about this, but I sometimes I think like every child is mine and we need to help them. So, you know, take
Brandee,
a
thank
minute.
you. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And obviously, your passion is really, really palpable and clear. I know Melissa's put a little comment in the chat, but if you all have questions for Brandee, please do, put those in the chat, or if you're feeling brave and want to come off mute, I'm going to start it off. Brandee, can you just walk us through, like, what does a day of virtual learning and COVID life look like in our club? And could you start from the moment a kiddo is dropped off?
Yeah. So the second a child comes to the club, they will pull up in whatever transportation they're in, and then families are required to call our clubs, and they'll basically answer, 3 to 4 screening questions. I believe we're at 4. We've just added a 4th screening question. They will answer those questions, and then the temperature of the child will be taken at the front door, and then they'll come into the club. And after that, they'll sanitize their hands, put everything away, and get ready to learn. But I think the best way to share an experience is one day I thought I was going to help and put myself in ratio, and I need to understand what's going on. And so I showed up to the club and I said, well, I'm just going to work while I'm at the club with the kids. So I sat down at a table with 2 boys, and I was like, oh, do you guys have your computers? Are you getting started up, or what's the problem? And they were like, I don't have my password. And the other kid said, I don't have my charger. And I'm sitting there. I open up my laptop, realize my battery's dead. So I'm looking at my staff like, Mr. Ian, my battery's dead now too. And the kid next to me doesn't have a charger. I was like, well, I think I have a charger. Nope, I don't have a charger. So now I've just added to the problem. So I said, I'll step away and let me help you. Let me help the kids. And so the first part of your day is figuring out passwords and, where do we log in, and what is the schedule for the day. A lot of staff went above and beyond and have like pasted the schedule for kids everywhere. So that way we can kind of swap in and out when we need. And so it was really funny. So at one point I was working with the kindergartner trying to put her up on an Apple box so she could see the computer camera, because she was on a desktop and not an actual screen. So I'm standing next to her, making sure that we're doing this safely while she's engaged in class and we're learning how to write. So it's a lot. Imagine what PE is like. Kids are jumping around, jumping in place, doing jumping jacks. It's a lot of movement. And then, a lot of questions. That's the fun part, right? A lot of questions about not understanding work. And then, in addition to that, just getting tired of being on virtually. So we've got kids that are, not knowing how to express themselves, but they're frustrated. We tend to see behavior spikes in the afternoon because the days are too long. And then, kids that don't want to be engaged by, showing their camera. And so, or showing themselves on camera, and the teachers, requesting turn your camera on. And so, imagine our staff are anywhere from 1 to 12 to a 1 to 15 ratio. So that's one person working with 12 youth, trying, if we're lucky, trying to provide all these helping hands for each individuals. And it's definitely harder for the younger kids, right? K-5, but for your teens, for the most part, they got a handle on it. But there's still those struggles there. So if just a little bit of the tidbit that I saw for a day, hopefully that can give you an idea of what it's like in our world.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chris has asked if we have any parent and guardian training opportunities to empower them to advocate with more for schools for their children, particularly pertaining to special education, discipline, and access issues. So Brandee, I know we are just about to launch these meetings for kids who are coming into the clubs who have IEPs, who we know need additional supports from both the club and the school districts. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's a perfect answer to this question.
Yeah. So, one thing that we're actually doing on Wednesday is one of our parents has been a huge advocate to his for foster youth, and we're actually setting up a virtual meeting at our 8th Avenue Club. It's a virtual parent meeting for parents to get together and talk in a virtual setting about how to advocate for their children with special needs, how to figure out the system. The parent at 8th Avenue, I'm not sure if he's on here. He may be, but he has been amazing. I've learned so much for him. I have learned so much from him, and the avenues he's taken, the letter writing. He just spoke at a work session on a Senate work session for K through 12 on Friday, talking about how it is for him to advocate for 4 kids, to get all of them, all 4 foster kids have special needs, and what does that look like as a system. So he's had to tackle it child by child, focusing on the child with the most needs. He's on child number 2 right now. So there's 2 more not getting the attention that a system should be giving them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So yes, so we are trying to provide some training opportunities in like a conversational setting for those that are looking for support.
Great. I also want to highlight this is in the works of being scheduled, but for our club families, one of our board members, Adam Nelson, who is on the conversation right now, has connected us with the authors of a book called Work Parent, and they are going to be offering a free training session for all of our club families. It's most likely going to be scheduled for late January, early February. So keep an eye out. The thrust of Work Parent is how to feel like a successful, I don't know if be is the right verb there, but how to feel successful as a working parent, especially during COVID. Rob Campbell, one of our advisory board members from our Rotary Club, has asked how we measure success.
Wow. I think it's going to vary per child, honestly. I look at success as just getting them in the door, making that connection and building that trust, especially for our teens right now. The attendance in person for them is it's big, right? And if we can't get them in our doors, they're not going to benefit from our clubs, right? And part of the reason we want them into our clubs is so that we can help them access their remote learning. And so one of the programs that I'm going to talk about in a little bit is our Be Great to Graduate program. That is a civic leadership and mentorship program that we're bringing back from way back in the day of Boys and Girls Club in America, and we're tweaking it to be more of a COVID-friendly Be Great to Graduate, where we're targeting our seniors in high school and trying to get them through this last year of remote learning. I mean, and we're really targeting those students, or I should say, we're identifying those students with the district. The district is actually identifying them. For those that are going to need the most help, and then we're bringing them in to work with them on weekly attendance checks, grade checks, credit accumulation, competencies, just a whole list of things. We're a little late in the game on looking at how to support college and career readiness, but we're working on it. So there's a lot of things for our younger ones. Honestly, it's just giving them, in my personal opinion, it's providing an outlet for some social emotional learning and relief and that peer-to-peer connection. For our special education students, it's fighting every day for them to get them the services that they need, and getting those small wins, getting transportation for one student. We received transportation for a federal way student, where the district came and picked them up from our club, taking them to the school for in-person services. Now, this is happening now, and bringing them back to the club. That's one kid, and that's a huge win that I'd love to see across the county, across the nation, honestly, for those that aren't open. So there's plenty of ways to measure success. I mean, we see our impact daily from the kids and what they're learning, and then we hear it from our families and our partners in our community.
Fantastic. I'm also going to put one of our participants on the spot. We are joined by Meg Pittman. Meg Pittman is a former Boys and Girls Clubs of King County employee, and she now works for Boys and Girls Club of America. And her role is making sure that we have high quality programs delivered across the nation. Meg, if you're not in the mood to chat, to talk, then if you could pop in some metrics maybe that BGCA is looking at into the chat box, but also if you want to share those verbally, we'd love to hear from you too. Feeling shy today. So great. So Brandee, Hannah Blackburn, who is a club parent at our Ballard Club and has been an employee and a speaker and a committee member, she's kind of checking all those boxes, has asked about overall enrollment. Has it increased during COVID? Are our clubs full, and are there plans for opening more sites?
So we have gone down. Jamie, do you know the numbers before? I feel like was it 1,600?
So we have an enrollment of about 1,400 or so kids across the county. We were averaging, not every kiddo comes to the club every single day. Some clubs have the availability for a member to show up 2 or 3 days a week. Some families are having their children attend every day. We were averaging about 800 to 850 attendees each day pre-tightening of the COVID restrictions. So we've seen about a decline of roughly 100 kids on a daily basis across 24 clubs. So we have 10 clubs that are not currently open because they're in school sites or in areas where we can't access the club at this point. But we do have the opportunity. We have a wonderful partner in Lake Washington school districts, and they have said, the moment you have demand for more spaces, we will give you access to additional school sites and you can open up. So Hannah, from what I understand, and Brandee, jump in here, we are pretty close to maximum capacity with our current 24 clubs, and we have the opportunity to expand. And one of the things that is, I guess, a luxury of having 34 sites around the county is that, if one of our clubs is closed, there's another one generally not too far away that we can, ours at max capacity. There's another club a few miles away that we can refer you to. Anything you want to add to that, Brandee?
Right. And I think just to mention the childcare industry as a whole, this is kind of the representation that we're seeing, is that the numbers are down, but we're still meeting the needs of our community for those children that are showing up. And so the industry has been hit really hard, and we're part of the economic recovery. And so trying to figure out how we're going to stay alive. This is especially for our smaller providers, right? It's how are we going to stay alive to be able to provide this relief so families can get back to work as well. So it's interesting. I know that once restrictions are lifted and, probably we get more along into the spring, then we'll start to see our numbers go back, I would imagine.
Yeah, and just to point out, we are very lucky to have Susan Brown from Kids Co joining us. Thank you for being a wonderful peer and a great ally in this fight right now. Susan said that we had about 18 programs across the Seattle Child Care Business Coalition that were serving about 18,000 kids collectively. And now with COVID, it's down to about 7,000. So we know COVID's had a pretty big impact on our ability for our kids to be out, kids to be socializing, getting those social and emotional skills that are essential for all of us to be productive, kind members of our community. Any other questions? Any thoughts? Anything that you learned so far? Y'all are doing such a good job of following the rules and being quiet. Brandee, what's the thing that just keeps you going? This is hard. I know we all feel this. I also recognize that we can't say it enough. And and recognize that like the work that Brandee and her team and all of our youth development professionals across, not just across Boys and Girls Club, but across the industry are doing is challenging. You are essential frontline workers. And so that is hard to show up every day. So what keeps you going? What keeps your staff going? What's your why right now?
Yeah. I think my team, I'm like you said, I'm a US Navy veteran, and your team is sometimes means survival. And I can very much like bring that over to COVID times and childcare. We're just trying to survive right now. And so, there's days when I'm exhausted, and I just, somebody pops into my head, one of my team members, and I'm like, get to the club, get to work, because I think, we've got quite a few staff with a great sense of humor. And so it's good to have that camaraderie and be around them and know that we're in this together. So they are the reason that I keep going, and the why is our kids, and I think I'm speaking for everybody in the, probably in this room and as well as across the industry, is saying no to a good education for our children, and the basic resources that we as society should be providing to them is not acceptable to me right now. It shouldn't be acceptable to anyone. And so, actually my our foster parent down in Federal Way, he said something that really touched home. He said, I have these kids, and every adult has let them down in their lives, and the youngest is 8. Every adult that kid has come in contact, that those adults have let them down, and now is not the time. And we've got to change that. We've got to change the way society is, and how we're representing our kids and what we're doing for them. Like, we can't continue to say no, or it's enough, or I'm too busy, or I'm too tired. Like, you've got to continue to push through, because it's the only way we're going to make change happen.
I love that. I think that's also a brilliant takeaway for our kids to learn too, right? Bob Clough has asked, what best practices or learnings would you share with the public school systems who seem to be struggling with their mandate right now?
I love this question because I think we talk about this all the time, and we may even have some of our school district friends on here, because that's who we're working with collaboratively on a weekly basis. How do we make this happen? And we've got some really amazing SPS, Federal Way, Lake Washington, Mercer Island partners, school district partners that we're working closely with. But I think one of the things that I've learned recently, the most, I guess, looking at structure, right? Structure is important for society to thrive, adults to thrive, and especially kids, right? We don't have that right now. We are lacking structure across the county, across districts, on what our educational process should look like. And I keep hearing there's instructional hours that we are being held to as an education system, and I'm like, there's a waiver for everything right now. There is a waiver for everything in COVID, and I think we're doing more harm than good, and we need to take a look at this. So one of the things that I learned from Federal Way Public Schools is they are actually offering an AM option and a PM option for remote learning, which I think is brilliant. So we've been able to ask all our families K-5 to select the AM option, so that way we can focus a morning session of remote learning, break into lunch, and then in the afternoon, we've got a task force of staff that are going to handle our social emotional learning, our peer-to-peer connection. Let's focus on enrichment and recreation, and let's bring that program quality, structured program quality back into our programs, because right now we're reacting and we're responding, and we can't do our job well if we continue to do this. And in addition, for Federal Way Public Schools, is that their PM sessions are focused on the special education services. Okay, brilliant. So now I've got 20 kids that I need to go and, we're going to focus on these afternoon sessions. Well, I've got a small task force that can also help these children that are getting these PM special education services, whether virtual or in person. I can now, assign a staff to work closely with these 4 or 5 children, however many I'm serving. So I think, the remote learning schedules has just been a nightmare for providers because nothing lines up. So if you're a parent of, let's say, 3 kids in your home, you've got a kindergartner, a 3rd grader, and a 5th grader, and none of their breaks or their lunch times add up, like they're not scheduled the same. What does that do for you as a parent? Well, imagine what it's like for my club that's serving 6 districts and 11 different schools. It like we're there's the opportunity to do this well. Okay, not great and not perfect, but there's the potential to do it well. And just if we could just tweak that just a bit, like the impact I think would be huge. And that's really like the biggest focus that I'm looking at right now is how do we maintain structure during this time?
Yeah. Brandee once shared an anecdote with me of Brandee was helping a 1st grader do a reading assessment on a computer in the same classroom where they were grouping all the 1st graders together in the same space where another 1st grader from a different school had gym. And so there's one kiddo who's trying to focus on a reading assessment on her computer, and her friend peer three spaces over is jumping over something, right? Like, I don't think I could focus on what's on my screen if I have somebody 6 feet away from me jumping and having fun and I have to do the hard reading assessment, right? Like, so I think that to me was this very like aha moment of, my goodness, this is so much more challenging when you add in all those layers of different schools and different districts and different schedules. I think this is also a great segue. Adam Nelson, one of our county board members, asks, Brandee, what are we doing in the clubs to bring fun and joy to our kids' lives during remote learning?
Oh my goodness. That has been interesting. We did a phenomenal job this summer, and I really, really want to bring it back. We did it in the spring and this summer. We were doing virtual competitions amongst clubs where clubs could win. They were doing Jeopardy virtually, scavenger hunts. Our teen programs right now just did a virtual cook-off, a TikTok competition. So I think, just bringing back some, fun competition and connection across the clubs is really important. And then, just celebrating the wins, celebrating, all the good things that are happening around our community. We've got a lot of people that are reaching out with donations and virtual visits. And, for a brief moment, there were some in-person visits outside in a parking lot, and so the kids love it. And I think they know that people care about them, and people are always checking in to make things better for them. So it's a hard time to bring fun back, but we're still doing it. We're doing it all.
We're doing it all. And I also want to point out that we have a number of parents in our community, right? So those of us who have young kids, we're used to going to the pediatrician and there's the box on your assessment that says, my child doesn't watch more than 1 to 2 hours of screen time per day. We all know that is completely out the window right now. But when kids are going to school in the club, as soon as school is over, the screens are shut down. And the rest of the time is about having actual face-to-face conversation, 6 feet away, the face-to-face conversations with your friends, being physically active, and really just like working on that kind of connection that doesn't involve technology. And playing games that are about interacting with your friends. So I'm super proud of the fact that our organization has put that emphasis on non-screen time and helping kids reconnect with just play. So thank you so much, Brandee, and thank you, Adam, for that great question. Any other thoughts, any questions, any concerns that you all have? And Brandee, I'm going to ask while we give people some time to noodle on that. I think we've all through COVID, we all find those moments of silver lining and have certain aspects of our lives that we really have come to enjoy through, which I know sounds weird, through the last 8 to 10 months, however long this has been. So what is it that we have done, that we have learned and added to our programmatic offering at Boys and Girls Club that you hope we keep when the vaccines are more widely available and school is hopefully back in person in our traditional setting come fall?
I definitely want to continue the Be Great to Graduate and replicate that across the county. It is a it has the opportunity to be a phenomenal program. I mean, just the mentorship alone, like it's going to be different at every club, right? Because every community is different. So you want to be able to give some flexibility and let a program kind of evolve organically. And so right now we're working with Chief Self. Our Southwest Club is working with Chief Self for that's a part of Seattle Public School District. And they're targeting, like I said, 10 to 15 seniors to work with them to get them through this next year. But in addition, they're assigning a staff member. And last week, we assigned our first Southwest board member to be a virtual mentor to one of our youth. So I'm super excited to see what that looks like and what she can do. And, Sarah has joined our CAB, and she's very motivated. And I think just to step in and say, hey, I can mentor one of those youth virtually, what does that entail? And so her and our team director have been working really closely on, what that looks like, check-ins with the youth. And then, but like I said, most importantly, how to build that relationship and be a person for a young child to be able to reach out to and talk to. So I would love to see that. I think it's a really great program, and I think one of the cool things about it, we're also working with the career and college and career readiness partnership with Federal Way Public Schools. And I think, there's so much opportunity to be able to bridge the gap in educational justice. So, we're looking at, we had a great meeting last week with, I think, 4 different people from the district. And what we were looking at is what are their tools and resources. So they use an online tool called Maya Learning, and it basically lays out a program for them. Now, what is missing? What is going to be harder to achieve using this tool? Okay, we've looked at, there are some essay writing assignments, there's some resume writing, there is some interview prep that we can now do in the club to help bridge that gap and be able to provide more of an opportunity. So I think that's really great. I'd love to see that continue. And in addition, we're doing, we have some board members from Harborstone, and as well as Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley is almost up and running. Harborstone is up and running, and they're doing our financial literacy classes for our teens. And those are our board members. How great is that for them to spend 30 minutes out of their week to do a virtual class on financial literacy? Like, I love it. So there's some really great programs that are happening that I hope we can continue. And I think as long as we always look at everything out there and what's happening in the world as how do we turn this into an opportunity, we can get through this.
Fantastic. I am really hopeful that I agree with you. I think all those are great programs that we should absolutely continue. If people are on the call are interested in potentially being a mentor for the Be Great program, are there opportunities, and what's the best way to get in touch with you about that?
So we do have an opportunity at our Federal Way EX3 club as well as our Southwest club. So you can always email me and I can make that connection and the introduction.
Great. Brandee, if you could put your email in the chat box, that'd be great. Also, I do want to call out, Brandee mentioned board members. We have a number of our club advisory board members on the call right now. If you are interested, if you're not currently involved as an advisory board member and interested in learning more, it's a great way to support a pretty specific club or program and to get some board experience without necessarily having to be involved in the governance side. So Hillary Abrams from our team. I'm going to ask Hillary if you could also put your email in the chat. We'd love to talk to you if you're interested in those kinds of opportunities as well. Bob Clough has asked, how's the staff doing? How's our health, burnout, turnover rate? Are we hiring? If so,
always hiring. Always hiring. No, no, but for real, we are. Staff burnout is real, and like I said, it's all across the childcare industry with our childcare providers. I was actually working with a mom. She has 2 children in our program, both with autism, and she's been providing us with resources, training resources, and she looked at me and said, I get it. I get it. You have caregiver burnout, because she's a nurse. She gets it. And she was like, that's why she's trying to support us with all these additional resources, is because she sees the state of our staff and the exhaustion. I mean, they're working so hard, but they're also forgetting some of the basics, just because it's constant. How do I put it? Do you remember, like, when you have a toddler and they're just learning to walk and they're running all over the place? It's just like that constant active supervision and observing, and just like it's some mental exhaustion. And so, I think we as an organization have done a really great job at celebrating our teams and giving them thanks and praise and reminding them of why they're doing the work they're doing, and why we're so proud of them. Our parents do some great shout outs, and as well as our board members, to support our teams. Actually, for Thanksgiving, we were able to give everyone the week off. And then for those of us that felt that part of our self-care was training, we did an all-day training where we focused on trauma-informed care and self-care and awareness as well. Because, one of the concerns is that some of our communities that, or some of our staff that are serving these kids right now, they also have their own trauma. They also have their own triggers and their own coping mechanisms. And so in a time like that, you potentially have staff getting triggered and trying to handle another child that is being triggered. So, I think just trying to figure out how we help our staff through this and their mental health and well-being as well, is very important. And so, I think it feels like, I was talking to my friends and some other childcare providers, and it feels like we were working really, really hard, and we just got over this hump, and we're kind of in a lull. So I think we're starting to rejuvenate and get ready for round 2. But all in all, we've got such a phenomenal team. I couldn't be more proud of the people that are showing up every day, because that's step 1, is just showing up, and that's what they do.
That's great. I also want to make sure that we address Bob's question about health. We've talked about mental health. Obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have had a couple of cases of COVID in our club communities, and we have had some of the strictest safety and health protocols from the very beginning that have been really effective. We have not had spread. We have been, we are working really closely with public health authorities and following all of the best practices and guidelines. And so in the cases where we have had exposures, we've shut down, deep clean, quarantine the people who need to be quarantined. And we've been very fortunate that, on the whole, our staff has stayed safe and healthy, our community stayed safe and healthy. We have a great question from Stephen asking, how are we building a feedback loop with our school districts? And his example is the lunch challenge. Obviously, Brandee, you work super closely with all of our school partners and our childcare partners as well. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the best thing that could have come out of COVID, or one of the many good things, is the collaboration amongst our community. Our school partners are phenomenal, and they're dealt with a daunting task. They meet with us weekly. to figure out how do we improve what we're doing, or what do our children need, or what do providers need to continue on in this effort. We've got a great community-based organization coalition that meets on Thursdays, where we are.
Oh, Brandee, your sound seems to have cut out for a moment. I can't.
How about now?
There we go. Perfect.
Oh, I didn't do anything. So okay, great. All right. Well, now I lost track of what I was saying.
You're talking about community-based organization coalitions meeting on Thursday.
Oh, I just saw Senator Wilson's face. She's a part of another collaborative group that meets on Fridays. There's, and between, all the providers and our representatives. We also have Schools Out Washington, who has been a huge help to the work that we do. I mean, it's really, we've just brought this community together to continue to share the best practices. I remember at the start of this getting calls from people across Seattle, from the city. How are you operating? Because we were one of the first organizations. Well, we stayed open. I guess I should say the first to open. We stayed open, and so it was a lot of, well, what are you doing? How are you tracking that? What are you doing here? And so I think there's just a lot of sharing. And I think because nobody knows like what the best practice is or how to respond, it's easiest to do together. And so I couldn't be more happy just the way that we've built this network of resources, and unfortunately it hasn't happened in the past, but or maybe at a much smaller scale. But I think we're realizing that systems are broken and children need to be served, and like I said, they are our future, but they are our now. And so we need to get on the ball.
That's great. We have time for one last question. I do want to point out, as Brandee said, this pandemic has been, these two pandemics that we're in the middle of, have been a real forcing function for all of our peer organizations. And I intentionally use the word peer organizations, which is not something you'll always hear in the nonprofit industry, to come together and work together, because we recognize that, making sure kids are safe, learning, and having fun is an essential part to surviving this unprecedented time. And it's also going to be an essential part to keeping our economy going and getting people back to work as soon as possible. So, and school districts are very much a part of that. And we have been partnering with all of the school districts that are offering the lunch programs. We are, making sure that we're availing ourselves to those, and making sure that our kids are staying fed, and the families who do experience food insecurity are taken care of in that way as well. So we do have time for one last question. I do want to thank you all for your participation, for sticking with us. An hour can feel long sometimes. It's, I think, been a really great conversation, some really thoughtful, really helpful questions. And Melissa just put in the chat, this is the first of 3 conversations that we're hosting between now and January 12th. So next week, we're talking about our teen programming. You can hear from Trey Beauchamp, who is our senior teen director for Boys and Girls Clubs of King County, and a former Boys and Girls Club kid himself. He works at out of our Wallingford Club. And then Melissa Jones, our executive director for Youth Force. Youth Force is our job readiness and internship placement program that we run across the organization. We have a particular focus on our kids in Federal Way and our kids in the Rainier Beach area. And then on January 12th, we will be talking about community safety with Marty Jackson, who is the executive director of our Southeast Network program. So we hope that those will work for your calendars. We'd love to see you in those conversations. If anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, to reach out to me personally. I'll put my information in the chat as well. Thank you all so much for being with us, for being part of our community, and for stepping up for our kids. We could not do this work. We could not stay open throughout this crazy time if it weren't for our community members and, your support, your generosity, your high fives, virtually, physically distanced, have really kept us all going. So thank you so, so much for all you do and believing in our kids. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Great job, Brandee.